Welcome back, viewers. Today's story comes from Bruce from England. He recounts a humorous and slightly unnerving experience during a taxi ride from Bangkok Airport to Pattaya, a journey filled with unexpected detours and a surprising encounter with Thai tourism. Bruce, traveling from Bangkok Airport to Pattaya via the Thai Limo Service, finds his journey taking a bizarre turn when the driver gets lost in Bangkok and later makes an unscheduled stop at a jewelry store. The experience triggers a flashback to Bruce's first trip to Thailand, involving a tuk-tuk tour of jewelry stores and a memorable visit to a Patpong go-go bar. Let me tell you, getting to Pattaya these days is a far cry from my early adventures in Thailand. Back in the day, I'd land at the airport, navigate my way to the Morchit bus station, and then endure a long bus ride down to Pattaya. It was cheap, sure, but after a long flight, it was hardly ideal. In recent years, though, I've embraced the Thai Limo Service. Yeah, it costs a good deal more. Around 1,500 baht for the direct ride. But the convenience is absolutely worth it. It's door to door, and honestly, I've always been quite pleased with their service. So, on this particular trip, I handed over my 1,500 baht. The driver, a polite young man, tucked my suitcase into the back of the car, and we were off. He immediately asked if I'd be willing to cover the tollway charges, and of course, I agreed without hesitation. The tollway is significantly faster, cutting down on travel time, which is always a bonus after a long international flight. We merged onto the tollway and I paid the first booth fee. I think it was 40 baht. Everything was going smoothly until we hit some unexpected traffic. We were still very much within the sprawling confines of Bangkok. The driver, perhaps sensing my subtle impatience or simply being efficient, suggested we take a different route to save time, then rejoin the tollway later. Who am I to argue, I thought. He's the local expert. I certainly don't drive in Bangkok, and navigating its labyrinthine streets is a skill unto itself. Well, we exited the tollway, and almost immediately, the surroundings became completely unfamiliar. Now, even though I don't drive here, I've taken countless taxis in Bangkok over the years, so a good portion of the city has, in one way or another, met my eye. We crossed a long bridge spanning the rather filthy Chao Phraya River. The traffic off the tollway wasn't moving much faster than it had been on. The driver started to seem agitated, making sudden sharp turns into narrow alleys and overtaking other vehicles with a recklessness that made my eyebrows raise. What on earth is he up to, I wondered. If this had been a metered cab, I'd have instantly suspected he was giving me the grand scenic tour to inflate the fare. But no, this was a pre-arranged fixed price service. Yet every single time the fare is set beforehand and a driver veers onto a route I don't recognize or expect, that same chilling thought creeps into my mind. He's taking me somewhere to be robbed, raped and murdered. It's an irrational fear perhaps, but one that's hard to shake. Then, much to my immense relief, it dawned on me. He was lost, we were driving in circles. I began to recognize buildings I'd seen just minutes before. The poor guy was in a full-blown panic. He kept flashing nervous, furtive glances in the rearview mirror, trying to gauge my reaction to see if I was upset. I decided to put on my best poker face, leaned my seat back and tried to relax. Of course, I wasn't thrilled about the detour, but I know from years of traveling here how utterly useless it is to complain. He's Thai. He must save face. Admitting a mistake, especially to a Farang like me, is simply not an option. Thais, in their own cultural context, must always appear perfect. We crossed the river again, doubling back over the same bridge, a clear sign of his disorientation. By the time he finally found his way back to the tollway, my bladder was screaming and I desperately needed a beer. I asked him to pull over at a petrol station before we re-entered the main road. With my bladder mercifully emptied and a large cold Heineken in hand. I immediately felt better. I looked at him, gave a reassuring nod, and said, "My pen, right, no problem." He instantly broke into a wide, relieved smile. He understood that I had noticed his error, but wasn't going to make a fuss about it. And why would I? I still had my life. My wallet was still in my pocket. And rectally speaking, I still had my virginity. My worst fears hadn't been realized. And hey, I was back in Thailand. What's a few minutes lost after a 16-hour flight? I took a long, hard pull on my beer, feeling the warm glow of the alcohol slowly seep into my tired limbs, a comforting balm after the unexpected stress. During the remaining 2-hour drive to Pattaya, we made one more pit stop for another beer and another pee break. He let me scroll through radio stations, but all I could find between the static were endless commercials and disc jockeys chattering, no music worth listening to. We made some desultory small talk, and he could clearly see I was tired and bored with the long drive. Several times he suggested I just go to sleep. In a taxi, I thought, I never like to fall asleep in taxis, especially in a foreign country. I'm always afraid of where and in what condition I might wake up. When we finally rolled into Pattaya, he explained that he'd need to stop by the Thai Limo office to file some paperwork. This is standard procedure, and I'm quite used to it. The driver parks out front, ducks inside for a minute to let them know he's arrived with the customer, and then returns to take you to your hotel. Simple. Wasn't I surprised then, when instead of pulling up to the familiar office on Pattaya 3rd Road, the one I'd been to countless times before, we stopped in front of a jewelry store. It was somewhere on North Road, I think, and I distinctly remember a sign out front proclaiming it the world's largest jewelry store, or some equally unlikely, grandiose claim. My heart immediately began to race. I instantly recalled the Lonely Planet's stern warnings about jewelry store scams in Thailand, and my internal monologue kicked into overdrive. No way am I getting out here to enter that goddamn jewelry store. No bloody way. It will take 10 men to drag me kicking and screaming into that stupid tourist trap. Then, the driver got out and simply walked into the building without saying a single word to me about following him. I sat there for a few tense seconds. A moment later, a beautiful young woman in a traditional Thai costume approached the car and gestured for me to roll down the electric window. Oh bugger, I thought, bracing myself. Here we go. I rolled the window down, fully expecting a high-pressure sales pitch and an invitation to follow her inside. The classic honey trap. But all she did was hand me a business card and smile sweetly. That was it. I rolled the window back up and watched her cute little backside wiggle back and forth against the tight-fitting Thai silk as she gracefully glided away. Swish, swish, swish. I could feel something beginning to stir in my pants and inwardly scolded myself for thinking impure thoughts about such a seemingly fine, chaste young lady. Damn. I wished he'd stopped by a soapy massage parlor instead. Hey, a hopeful thought flitted through my mind. Maybe that would be next. Well, if that was as hard as they were going to try to get me to buy jewelry, it really wasn't so bad. My initial feelings of suspicion and annoyance actually began to soften as I started to realize just how considerate and thoughtful it truly was of Thai Limo to bring me by this place. They probably figured what a shame it would be for tourists to miss out on the quintessential jewelry store tour experience simply because they opted for their premium taxi service instead of the cheaper metered taxis and tuk-tuks. I mean, I don't suppose they could have any sort of kickback arrangement worked out with a jewelry store. Nothing so crass and vulgar as that. No. Not Thai Limo, the taxi service that operates under the very same emblem as the national airline. Surely this is done purely out of a selfless regard for the customer's cultural enrichment. My mind then wandered back to that very first fateful trip I made to Thailand so many years ago, and I fondly recalled the very first jewelry store tour a tuk-tuk driver gave me, and my fellow Farang buddy, with a few temples charmingly thrown in here and there, of course. He picked us up on Khao San Road, where we were staying in a squalid little room for a princely 80 baht a night. We were dressed in crumpled shorts, faded tank tops, and flip-flops, and hadn't bothered to shave for a couple of days. It was hilariously fun to be greeted at every jewelry store as if we were celebrities. Pretty girls offered us free soft drinks, and very imposing-looking businessmen in well-tailored suits spoke to us in their plush, air-conditioned offices as if we were their equals. We were just scruffy backpacker hippies with very little money and certainly no credit cards. The tuk-tuk driver had explained that it didn't matter if we bought anything. He was perfectly happy if we just entered the stores. I felt a little nervous about the whole charade, but my buddy found it rather amusing, so I just played along, enjoying the absurd theatricality of it all. The absolute climax of that particular tour, however, was a visit to Patpong. The driver eagerly urged us to follow a toot into a rather nondescript go-go bar, where we proceeded to witness naked women performing various gynecologically improbable feats of wonder. Most edifying, indeed. It was early afternoon, and the place looked rather empty. In fact, I'm fairly certain there were no other customers besides us. After about 20 minutes, the show concluded with vaginally discharged darts popping our overhead-held balloons. Someone then brought all the girls Coca-Cola in small plastic cups, and soon enough, each of us had a naked girl sitting in our laps. My gal asked me if I wanted to go upstairs, and quoted me a price that was way beyond my meager budget. I looked over at my friend, but he was quite busy nursing, if you get my meaning. Since I wasn't going upstairs, and my friend looked about ready to do the deed, right where he sat on the bar stool, I suggested we'd had enough and requested the bill. Let's see. 2,000 baht for 2 Singa beers. That was about $80 US at the time, as the baht was trading at roughly 25 to the dollar. That beer must have been awfully strong, because I'm usually pretty good at math, and something wasn't comprehending. I politely requested clarification, and instantly we were surrounded by several well-muscled young Thai gentlemen, all eager to aid our understanding. 2 more guys moved towards the door, seemingly anxious to prevent us from leaving. The explanation? We had supposedly purchased Coca-Cola for the girls. What? I hissed. I asked my buddy if he had placed the order. I asked him if anyone had even requested that we buy drinks for the girls. No to both questions. The circle of Thai muscle pulled tighter around us. Thoroughly sphinctered, I saw no way out of this hole but to pay. Oh well, it must have been all our fault. A simple cultural misunderstanding. We couldn't speak a word of Thai, and the muscle men clearly didn't have a very good command of the English language. All they could manage to bark out was, "You buy Lady Dink, you pay." They seemed very sincere and earnest about it all. All very nice fellows, I'm sure. Probably university students earning a little extra tuition money at their part-time job, right? Moments later, my current Thai limo driver appeared, rousing me from this deep reverie. It had certainly been a long time since my very first trip to Thailand and that inaugural jewelry store tour. While I do feel a certain nostalgia about the experience, my curiosity has long been satisfied. I would definitely not be going inside this world's largest jewelry store. Today, thanks. But just think how truly considerate and thoughtful it was to bring me here. What a touch of class from Thai Limo. So, what do you think of Bruce's Thai travel tale? Have you ever had a taxi ride that went completely off the rails? Or experienced the unique charm of Thai tourism? Share your stories in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more travel adventures and misadventures. Oh, and let's keep the background music happy, shall we?